Before going to the discussion, we would like to inform you of the different relevant CSA initiative approval dates. First was on March 3, 2020. An effective overall internal control assessment was released and discussed to the Board Audit Committee level. With this, LLTM suggested that to improve the control environment, which is the knowledge and application of internal controls by process owners, a CSA or control self-assessment has to be done prior to the audits. Second was on April 29, 2020. Application of CSA to targeted audit engagements, as driven by AP top risks, was approved by the Board Audit Committee. Lastly was on May 5, 2020. The CSA approach was also agreed with LLTM as the new RM overall function lead and APRM representative to be controls based. This is to immediately determine lacking basic controls and address it proactively. The focus of the discussion will be on the four objectives. First is understanding control self-assessment or CSA. Second is introduce the benefits and misconceptions of CSA. Third is to discuss the responsibilities in conducting the CSA. And lastly, the fourth one is orientation on the CSA process. Before going to the controlled self-assessment topic, we would like to remind and reiterate about the risk management process that we currently have, wherein we identify risks, we assess these risks, we identify mitigating internal controls, and then we review effectiveness of these controls. So with this, the internal controls will help us decide for the risk treatments, whether we avoid, reduce, we transfer, or we retain these risks. Internal control is a process designed to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of objectives relating to operations, reporting, and compliance. As we all know, all business units have different objectives, and in achieving the goals or targets along the way, there are possibilities of events that can hinder our attainment of these targets, which are now what we call risks. Thus, controls are identified to mitigate these risks and ensure success in the attainment of targets. All of these controls are now what undergoes controlled self-assessment. The image shown is the risk life cycle. It shows that there are different levels or stages of risks. And with this, there are also corresponding type of controls needed to mitigate these risks, which are preventive, detective, correction, and corrective action. Now we go to question number one. What is controlled self-assessment or CSA? Controlled self-assessment, as defined, is a process through which internal control effectiveness is examined and assessed. It is a management technique to assure stakeholders that the internal control system of an organization is reliable. It is a methodology used to review business objectives, risk involved, and internal controls used to manage those business risks. Definitely, its main purpose is to validate effectiveness and sufficiency of controls. Now then, what are the main objectives of CSA? There are two main objectives of CSA. First of which is to provide reasonable assurance that all business objectives will be met. These are in terms of financial goals, organizational capacity, and such. It aims to achieve success of 100% or even beyond. The second main objective of CSA is to enhance audit responsibilities by shifting some of the control monitoring responsibilities to functional areas. This means taking the share of the pie. Kindly note that enhance does not mean to replace. This will only mean that audit teams will be able to focus on critical risks that needs to be validated. Audit can have a greater scope coverage for assurance services and even consultations as needed and or requested by process owners. There are also other objectives of controlled self-assessment that we have gathered. First is proactive management. So as you can see, proactive means preventing problems before they arise. CSA aims to ensure alignment of objectives and strategies from top to bottom and vice versa. Next is reinforced accountability of risks and controls. or proper delineation of ownership. Next is to ensure that risks and controls are properly monitored and mitigated in a timely manner, because if not addressed on time or immediately, greater risks and or problems can emerge from this, giving us greater impacts. Next is to ensure that enough and proper resources are allocated for risks that are classified as a priority or critical. This is in terms of manpower, materials, budget, and even time. This is to avoid all of the risks from happening. The next is with regards to clear and effective communication. CSA aims to ensure better communication of CEO's objectives and strategies to all business lines. This directs or drives the tone at the top. Next is to ensure that business line managers effectively communicate the risks and controls to team members so we will have a common understanding and there is no misalignment. Lastly, there is education. This is to ensure that team leads and team members have better comprehension of understanding risk control and risk management. This is also to gain the empowerment of workers to assess or even design control environment that would greatly help the management achieve its goals. For the next question, what controls should undergo CSA? Prioritization of internal control will depend on the criteria set by the top management. Self assessments are often completed for all of the company's primary control, and these primary controls are selected as most critical and significant. Question number 4. Who should conduct CSA? The key characteristic of CSA is that it relocates traditional responsibilities to managers and employees who are responsible for the specific business functions or processes, thus the self and control self assessment. So, what is the role of auditors? Auditors are to be facilitators and guide team leaders or implementers of CSA for risk assessment and risk control evaluation. Question number 5. When or how often is CSA conducted? Self assessment is so versatile and flexible in application, management can conduct the process as often as desired. They could do this as often as they like for critical areas or controls and less to those considered as low priorities. Question number 6. How is CSA accomplished? There are three common methods in performing CSA. First is survey or questionnaires. These are customized questionnaires approved by management, usually answerable by yes or no, and completed by line management. The second method is through interview, which is the day to day working knowledge of employees in the area or department. Management, which are the team leads or even subject matter experts, can do the interview in a casual manner, asking the day-to-day process and or activity of employees on which they can gather risks and controls and evaluate if the controls are effective in mitigating the risks that they encounter. Even suggestions and recommendations can be gathered in this method. The third method is through workshops, which is an interaction and collaboration in identifying issues and solutions for possible recommendations from participants. This can be done in a classroom-based scenario or even in terms of virtual setup like Zoom or Hangouts. And again, to reiterate, the workshops can be facilitated by auditors as guide for the whole program. However, the responsibility and initiative for CSA relies on the middle and line management as to what process and or control to prioritize in the CSA, methods that are most effective for them, and the delegation of who shall conduct these CSAs. Question number 7. What are the benefits of CSA? Benefits of using CSA. First is early detection of risks. Since this is done at the management and line level, Risks being encountered by them can be easily identified and included in the risk assessment. Second is more effective and improved internal control. Process owners would know what controls or solutions would best address their problems. Third is foster an improved awareness of risk and controls among management and staff. Improved risk management culture, emphasizing the responsibility of all in terms of risk identification and control. Fourth is more motivated employees. Awareness of goals and methods in achieving them will give great motivation. Next is reduction in control cost. Investment on resources and/or controls that would directly impact the risk instead of having multiple costly and unnecessary controls. Next is improved audit ratings. Addressing the problems at the first and second line of defense will ensure higher audit ratings. Next is assurance provided to stakeholders and customers. This would only mean quality service given. Next is highlight best practices and opportunities to improve business performance and standardize and benchmark processes where the same functions are performed in multiple locations. So this would only mean standardizing processes, making it more lean and removing process wastes. Aside from the benefits, there are also some concerns in implementing and performing CSA. First is that this could be mistaken as an audit function replacement. It does not mean that when a CSA program is in place, audit is no longer needed. Audit as a third line of defense ensures that self-assessment targets are directly addressed and that this is conducted as designed, effectively for improvement. Second is that this may be regarded as an additional workload to employees. Definitely, resistance may emerge due to this program, especially if this is not properly communicated or there is no buy-in from process owners, and its value is not emphasized. Third and fourth is related. People can give recommendations and solutions. However, it does not mean that management can accommodate it all. Deliberations will be done to validate if raised suggestions or recommendations can be fit to the identified issues or risks. Thus, turning down an employee's suggestion could lead to low morale, which can be related to the lack of motivation, affecting the ability or willingness of employees to improve on risk management and detection of weak controls. Now we go to the proposed control self-assessment process. First is orientation, cascading orientation of control self-assessment, such as this session. Second is development, selection or prioritization of controls and creation of control self-assessment questionnaires. Third is implementation, actual conduct or actual implementation of control self-assessment in the selected controls and/or processes. Fourth is evaluation, deliberation or assessment of results and issuance of CAR for identified gaps. Lastly is correction, identification and implementation of corrective action plans to address identified gaps.